We're hoping that soon we'll have all the hostages back, and they'll find some way of creating a ceasefire and give the people down south sense of security. They deserve it, and we would all expect it. So hopefully soon God will help, and with the help of the president and the American administration to put pressure on the Hamas terrorist group, but we'll have peace.
Amen.
All right, should we get started?
Yes, we were in chapter 6, and we were about to start in the chapter of divorce in chapter 6.
Right. Okay, 1 second. Yes, okay. All right, ready to go?
Yep.
Okay, shalom to everyone. Thank you, Frank, for arranging this class, this broadcast. I hope that you are all well and feeling good about your lives and moving in the right direction. Each week, we try to go through a few paragraphs of laws and suggestions, recommendations of how to lead a life according to let's call it the Noahide plan. We're always looking for new words. We're trying to steer away from the idea of Noahide faith. It's not a new religion. It's part of the religion that is based on the Torah, Scripture, the Pentateuch, the beginning of the Bible. And in 3 days, we're celebrating here in Israel and everywhere in the world. Jews will be celebrating the festival of Shavuot. Shavuot means the weeks because in the Torah, the people of Israel were commanded, it's one of the 613 commandments, to offer up a meal offering from the new harvest of barley in Eretz Yisrael, in Israel, bring it to the temple. It was a national thing. So there was the priests, the ministers who ran the temple, they would arrange it beforehand together with the Beit Din Hagadol, the high rabbinic court. And the day after the first night of Pesach, they would go and quickly harvest some of these of the barley that had God's bounty, God's gift for this year, the beginning of it, and they would bring it as an offering to God in the temple. And in the Torah, it also says, "And you shall count," beginning with that harvest, the day after Passover, the first day of Passover, you start counting, and it says you shall count 7 weeks, 7 weeks. And on 7 weeks is 49 days, of course. And on the 50th day, you will celebrate a festival, a holy day, and it's the festival of the weeks. And then you would bring, again, symbolically, a national offering organized by the leaders of the land. They would then harvest the beginning of the wheat and bring a meal offering of the new wheat as a show, of course, of that recognition that everything is from Hashem. All our blessings are from Hashem, as well as bad things that happen. But bad things happen also because there are evil people out there, lazy people, jealous people, and God, the merciful God, yes, it's sometimes hard to accept that, allows these things to happen even to good people. So the Festival of the Weeks is a connection between Passover, the idea of the Exodus of Egypt, out of slavery, and to the new situation where we are free people, free to make choices, and God has given us instructions through the Torah, the commandments, the laws that are in the Torah. So it's called the Festival of Weeks. In the Torah, it doesn't mention anywhere that it is the festival of the giving of the Torah, which is the way it's celebrated principally today. Most people are not farmers. To our regret, we don't have the temple rebuilt yet to bring these meal offerings, as I mentioned before. So and of course, the idea that God revealed somewhat of God's self to humans through the people of Israel, instructing us here. I'm beginning to give you the laws, beginning with the 10 Commandments or the Decalogue. And that was a big thing. It should be considered definitely for the people of Israel, because it also definitely embodies the mission of the people of Israel. Why did God take us out of Egypt? To give us the Torah so that we could go to the land that he had promised, that God had promised to as an eternal heritage to the people of Israel, where they would live according to the rules and the ideals of the Torah, and from Zion, from Jerusalem, the ideas and the ideals would spread to all of humanity. That's in a perfect world, so to speak. So it began, the people of Israel, of course, being human beings, failed occasionally until they didn't listen to enough to the prophets. Occasionally they did, and God, for various reasons, allowed enemies. The first time around, the Assyrians, then the Babylonians, and then the Persians, and then the Greeks, and then the Romans, and then the Crusaders came, then the Muslims came, and the people of Israel are dispersed. But so being dispersed around the world, and we do, for the sake of all of mankind, we accepted the Torah on that day, and we recognize, believing Jews recognize that God chose the people of Israel to be the teachers of the Torah to the entire, to all of humanity. So that's the way it's celebrated by Jews around the world, depending how observant they are. Of course, they don't go to work, and we treat it almost like a Shabbat. The only difference is on festivals like Passover, like Shavuot, we are allowed to do some cooking as long as the fire was lit beforehand. So if you leave a gas range on, or you have a hot plate, or whatever kind of induction or whatever modern stoves there are today, what if that was left lit, then you can put something on it. You can cook from fresh, though we try to cook most of the meals beforehand so that nobody has to be in the kitchen cooking. And of course, we have nice meals. We have a bit of a longer service. We read the book of Ruth in synagogues, but also we try to arrange and to attend more classes to study the Torah and the theology around and that grew from the Torah, in order to show Hashem and to remind ourselves that we feel privileged that the Torah was given, and that we have to do more to study it, to understand it, to bring it into our lives, and then in that way also to spread it to all of humanity. Interesting thing, it generally, the festival, amongst other names, is referred to, as I said before, the Torah refers to it as the festival of Shavuot. Generally, in Jewish tradition, we refer to it as Chag, a festival, Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah. Matan is like a matana, which means a gift. Torah, it means the teaching, or the five books of Moses. So it's called the Chag Matan Torah, and an interesting idea that is a reminder to us. It was never called Chag Kabbalat Torah. Kabbalat means reception. I did mention before that the Jews accepted the mission, the charge, the responsibility, and we accepted the laws as we heard them at that point. But the rabbis emphasize we were given the Torah. God allowed us and bestowed upon us the Torah at the beginning. But to accept the Torah, to really receive it, it has to be received every day of your life. You have to feel, I'm getting in anew, I'm going to study it again, and I'm going to try and make sure I'm keeping to the laws. And it's a reminder that nobody should ever feel, I've studied enough. I once asked a cousin of my wife, who was a doctor all his life. He was involved in research here in Israel. He was born in the UK, lives in Israel, lives in Jerusalem. And I once asked him, when our children were still young, and you all probably have this experience, every other week you heard about a new superfood, and this is what you should be eating, and make sure your kids get enough of it, from kale to avocados to blueberries to whatever. And they're all, the things that I mentioned are all nutritious and good things. So I said, how do you decide? We want to try to feed our children to be healthy and to get into good habits. He smiled, and he was involved in research here in Israel on right diets, correct diets. Now, first of all, there's correct diets for one type of person, and for another person, it may not work. Westerners can stomach certain things, while I believe people from Japan maybe, and Korea and places like that, they eat less dairy than we do in their digestive system. I might be mistaken, and it's a generalization, but I was surprised when I recently heard about that. So, what's right for one person is not necessarily, good for the other one or proper. But he did say to me, he smiled and he said, yeah, okay, don't get carried away by any of those. He said, it's right. Again, maybe this has been changed. Don't eat too much red meat. Fish is good. Um, eat a balanced diet was his main emphasis, which includes fresh fruit and vegetables if you can get them and afford them. But the main thing he said about eating, we eat too much. In the Western world, we eat too much. You get up in the morning, whatever your first things that you do, whether after bathroom and shower, let's say, brush your teeth. Okay, then I go to services. You might do some exercise, some running, whatever you do. But then, of course, you want to sit down and have a breakfast. Is it hard to find the breakfast? No, you go into the kitchen, there's the cereal, there's the oatmeal, there's eggs, there's bread. Okay, God willing, everybody who's listening to this has this, and it's not a problem. So, okay, you have your breakfast. Then you go to work, and about 10 o'clock, maybe you have a coffee break. And if it's in an office, then well, there's probably some donuts or some other nosh to have there. So you have something else to eat. And then, of course, lunch rolls around. You have a nice lunch break and you have another meal. And then you go home and whatever you do, maybe on the way home, you might have a beer or a stop for something. And don't forget the coffee that you're drinking while you're at work. And then if you're invited out to someone's house, they serving you cake, coffee, or whatever they're serving you. He said, we've been blessed living in the Western world. Food is in abundance and is ready to have. You don't have to go out and grind the wheat or the barley to bake and to bring in firewood to light the fire to bake the bread. I think you'll get the picture. He said, we've never been, this is the modern Western world where food is in abundance and is so ready. Of course, much of it is processed and, a lot of the nutrients are taken out of it, but we eat too much, he said. Um, so he said, balanced diet, fruit and vegetables, don't eat too much meat. And he said another thing, exercise. He was a bit of not a nut about exercise, but the idea of walking, keep moving. Don't, if you sit at a desk at work, well, make sure you walk a little bit, ride a bicycle or, run, jog, but be moving, be in movement. He said, people, we don't move enough because we get in our car and we drive and just to walk 100 yards to the store to pick up our mail, I'll take the car because we're in a rush or the out. So he said to me, there are three things. And he said to me as a Jew, he said, there are three things a believing Jew should say, yes, I did, but not enough. One of them is learning Torah. This ties into Shavuot and the idea we don't say we receive the Torah on Shavuot, we say we were given the Torah, and now we have to receive it every day afresh, anew, and more. So a Jew is supposed to say, yes, I learned Torah, but not enough. The second thing was, he said, I've exercised, but not enough. That's not only for Jews, of course, but we should never. Now, there are people that go to the gym all the time, but he said the average Joe, I know I don't. Do I exercise enough? No. Do I try to walk? Yes, I try to walk or bicycle when I can, but not enough. And he said, the third thing I'm going to leave to you, Dove. I'm going to leave to you figure out what's the third thing you should say. I did, but not enough. You want to take a guess, Frank?
I would say charity.
Hey, good man, good man. He didn't tell me the answer, but the next time I saw him, I said, are you talking about acts of kindness and charity? He says, yes. He says, a person should always be able to say, yes, I gave, but I know I could have given more. Not to get down on yourself, but never feel confident, I've done my duty, whether study, whether, I've been nice. I was nice to my wife last month, and of course, charity starts at home, or, I volunteered. Yeah, I volunteered, you should always feel, what, really, I should be doing more, and I can do more. So those are three things. Yeah.
I like something that Rabbi Jonathan Sachs once said about another rabbi. He was quoting another rabbi that was asked the question, why does God allow starvation, sickness, and things in the world? And why doesn't he do something about it? Why doesn't God do something about starving in the world? And the rabbi said, the people were asking this rabbi, why don't you ask God, why he allows this stuff? And he said, because I'm afraid he'll ask me the same question.
Yeah, yeah, Rabbi Sachs, very witty, always with a good answer, a good response.
Yeah. So it
Well,
is on
obviously,
us.
yes, I agree. I believe there's too much pain, suffering, too much poverty in the world. I'm a believer, so I believe in God's infinite wisdom and compassion. So when I rely on that, then I have to say, okay, why did God do it? I think the answer is obvious. We have to have a little bit of belief in this, trust God in this, that, well, God expects us to pick up the slack. Yes, of course, God could have created a world where there's no sickness, where there's no poverty, and so on. But then what would be left for us to do except kick our feet up and put the ball game on, right? No, God wants us to pick up the slack and fill the gaps where He left it. And I wanted to begin also, we're actually the class with this now that we've moved on from Shavuot, and because we're involved in family. And I can say yesterday I spent almost the whole day with grandchildren babysitting. One of my sons, he's a major in the Israeli army in the reserves, and he's been called up. So he gets home every few days. But they have, God bless them, they have 8 children, all gorgeous children. And they have twins that are now about 8 months old. And the wife works also, and she needed to go out to run some kind of teacher class. So they asked me, can I come and spend the time with the twins for about 2 hours, 3 hours until she got back? And I had such a good time. They're really easy kids. They crawled around. I took them out to the garden and I put them in some swings, and then they had some grapes. I cut some grapes up for them. And they would, and I know they recognize me already, their granddad, and they smile and I can make them giggle. And then from there, I had an hour or two to kill. I had lunch with my daughter, one of my daughters and sons-in-law. He had just completed he was getting an award for graduating in business administration from college here. And so we met for lunch, and then I was taking care of their kids in the afternoon because he was getting the award, and they have little children, and they do, they wanted the little children to be the only part of the time. So I went and picked them up from their daycare, from their nurseries or whatever. They know me. They were excited that I was coming to pick them up, and I had a great few hours with them. And I came back, and my daughter, my son, they thanked me after, oh, Dad, it was so nice of you. And I said, it was truly my pleasure. And I feel blessed. So I'm explaining this because God willing, you all have families, and those of you who don't and will be able to have, God bless you. And those who are later on in life, we've discussed this. Obviously, God has a plan for you, and the plan might be that you have to help, whether your nephews and nieces, or help with your grandchildren, or your neighbors who might need a little bit extra hand. But you can help be sort of part of the team that is raising those children to become decent human beings. And we all know there's a big problem going on with the youth these days. We, society, we are to blame because we're not instilling in them the right values, whether religious or just moral values. And it's people talk about it's the me generation. I think we were also a bit me, but we understood that we have responsibility, we have obligations. And not first how we behave, how we speak to people, let alone if it was chores or at least clean up your own room, do the dishes occasionally. This isn't a hotel. This is, you haven't paid for a hotel service. So we're talking about family last few weeks, and today we'll be talking about divorce. In order for it to work, uh, many of the things we're talking about, people have to have their head in the right place and have to really feel, okay, what do I expect to get out of life? What do I want? What brings me enjoyment? If what brings people enjoyment is amassing wealth, beating out the other person, the competition, and going on fun trips and dressing nice clothing and driving cars, which is the message that is usually coming from the TV and from movies and so on, then people are generally not going to be happy, not going to have happy marriages, not going to raise good children or children that are, you're raising, we've become people that are just we're only happy when we're doing that, when we feel that we've beaten out the competition, we've laughed at somebody at someone else's expense, and it makes us feel bigger and better. When we now are getting away from our normal life. I don't look to get away from my regular life. I love my life. I would like it to, we'd all like it to be a bit easier. I'd like to see a bit more money coming in from my investments. But I'm happy. I don't really need as much, except sometimes you just want to get away and relax. And when we do manage to get away, my wife and myself, we feel, very happy. But we're happy with what we're doing. And so the question is, people have to decide, yeah, and you have to really think it out. What am I expecting to get out of this life? What brings me pleasure? If it's the parties, drugs, alcohol, whatever, and doing crazy things, then there's something wrong. Then God bless you. I don't think you'll ever really be happy. Because there's more in between the parties, and that kind of having a good time. That the gaps, and that's your life are the gaps, not the parties. On the other hand, if and it doesn't take much belief if you recognize that what my most valuable component in my life is the love of my family, my spouse, of course, my wife, my children, my brothers and sisters, and then, of course, the circle of friends and what I assume they think about me. And not because I'm looking to get one, I'm hoping they look at me and say, no, that's a good guy. We can count on him when we're looking for help. He volunteers. He's pleasant to people. When I meet people in services, before the service begins, I always try to smile and make a little, just show, and show people, I'm friendly. And if you can recognize that that's what is giving you pleasure, you can recognize, doesn't, the people who are the wealthy or the what would you call this? The they're the ones at the party that everybody wants to be around. That's if you can recognize that doesn't make them big people. That's not a successful life. Successful life is when you have love and friendship around you, when you have a sense of satisfaction. I'm doing something worthwhile in my life every day or almost every day. And it doesn't take much because there are people around us. They need the smile. They need the few good warm words and make them feel good. Our children need us, our grandchildren, our parents, if, God willing, your parents that are still alive. So if a person is in that frame of mind, first of all, they get to enjoy their life. The vacations, yeah, that's a change of pace and maybe to get away a little bit. But, when people around me are, and again, I'm not jealous of anybody, but, and I don't belittle that, people going away, going abroad or whatever, you know what? My wife and myself, we look at ourselves something and we say, okay, fine. No, we have a beautiful home. Thank God. We've been blessed. And our children come and visit us. The kids just walk in the door, the grandchildren. They don't expect things, but they come running, give us a hug and giggle. And then they look for my wife's grandma's cookies in the kitchen. And what do I need more in life? And again, I'm not setting back. I'm not ready to retire yet. I hope to teach more and more. And I volunteer in my community, but I don't need to get away from my life, and I'm enjoying my life. I'm worried about the world. I'm worried about Israel and what's going on here. I'm worried about, things like that. But so once we're in that frame of mind, then hopefully it should lead to more happy marriages and successful marriages. Because what are you looking for in the marital home? You're looking for love, respect, companionship, building a family, sort of a mirror to yourself that makes you sort of, we discussed the idea of man and woman becoming one as to make the things whole, but that you can multiply the good deeds that you're doing. Like we try to invite people in that don't have a family around, for Shabbat meals, or make sure, and let them know they're always welcome. Just give us a call, and if we're around, and there's always room at the table to add another chair on the Sabbaths, of course. So if you're in that frame of mind, then you're not looking for more out of life. If you can, that's fine. Now, obviously, I want to work and I want to spread the word of Torah and Noahidism and so on. I want to bring about peace. And so you can try, but once you have the home and you recognize this is what's important, then it's obviously going to lead to a happier family life, less divorce, and so on. Okay, so let's get into it now. First of all, so we've been discussing marriage. And most marriages, I think, fail because people don't know really what to expect, or they're expecting the wrong things in marriage. There's a famous saying, I'm not sure who was the first one that coined it. When people get married, they say that men are hoping that their wives will never change. They'll always look young and gorgeous and slim and so on, even after a few pregnancies. Women, and so women are going to change. Women are hoping that they can change their husbands, right? They get, okay, I can deal with it because eventually I'll change him. And they shouldn't go into a marriage expecting to change their husband. I think there's a third part to it. But we should understand to have a happy marriage, know what you expect to get out of the marriage, and see if the expectations are realistic. Um, we expect to rub off on each other, but out of respect and working together, we learn to live with each other and with love and respect and so on. So divorce was one of the things as marriage in the at least the early church. I don't even know if it's the early church, but in the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, where celibacy is considered the holier path for living, for human existence. And of course, Judaism was around much before the church. Not only that, the church grew out of Judaism, of course. Jesus being a Jewish boy with a Jewish mother and Jewish father, well, God or the Jewish father, of course, I'm saying this in jest. But the idea that to remain celibate, we discuss it when we're discussing marriage, it goes so much against what the Torah teaches. Divorce also, the Torah in Deuteronomy speaks about divorce. And the fact that the church, again, the Roman Catholic Church, does not allow it, it doesn't exist divorce within the church, the Roman Catholic Church. Again, for Judaism it's ridiculous because people are fallible, even good people. We make mistakes. We usually get married when we're young and of course, generally without any experience. So statistically, there are going to be divorces. We hope not many. We hope people learn, first of all, make the right choices, go into a marriage with the right expectations, what they want out of the marriage, and learn to overcome their differences or their issues. They thought it was going to be this way. Okay, so it's not. Um, so divorce is in the Torah already. If God thought it was a sin or it wasn't possible, then why would the Torah allow it? Now, it's not even a sin in Judaism. It's a resolution or a solution for a bad situation, for a situation that has become untenable or where people, at least one, if not both, are suffering. So the Torah says, okay, in that situation, this is what you do. Obviously, people shouldn't be able to just walk out on one another. Then what was the marriage then, if there was a marriage? Now, of course, many people just live together, not within observant Judaism, and I assume not within God-believing or God-fearing non-Jews. But based on the Torah, you realize God wants men and women to get married, and hopefully to remain. What's the term? Monogamous. To hopefully, for as long as you can, you stay with one partner. Um, I already told my wife, if she goes before me, I'm not getting married again. I don't have the patience to go through it again. I'll miss her, and I've gotten used to her, and I figured out things with her. I don't know if I have the strength to do it again, because it takes work. So divorce is not a sin. It's a resolving a bad situation. It's not complicated in Jewish law to get a divorce. There are procedures because we want to make sure it's done properly. And the sages, as customary, they said that yes, divorce is allowed, but the altar itself, the altar in the temple, that's one of the holiest things. The altar itself sheds tears when a person divorces from their first marriage or from their love of their life. The altar, which means it's a way of saying God cries. Maybe they didn't want to use a personification of Hashem, but they were saying that even though it's procedural, it's done in a rabbinic court, and it's not a sin, but it's not something, you don't get married in order to get divorced. Or, I remember an American young Jewish lady, woman working in the State Department, I think. I was on some kind of tour there with a group of educators from Israel, and she said something about, she talked about first marriage, and she used it as if it was a phrase, or I figure, maybe is that what it's called? I think so. And I asked her, we're from Israel. Can you just explain? It seems to me you use that in a way I'm not used to. So she said, yes, most people of her age, when they get married, the first time they don't expect it to last. They expect it to be for a few years to learn from your mistakes, and hopefully the next time around, and maybe the next time around, you'll have figured things out. And I thought that's sad because it means basically you're not willing to invest everything you could. I'm not talking about money. You're not willing to invest everything you could into to make sure the first marriage does succeed. You're worried so much about that because statistically, the statistics of divorce are scary and sad, and everybody should be saddened by it. So you're already making a decision. I'm not going to invest too much. I'm just going to, have a good time, maybe learn from it, and by the second time, I'll be able to go in with a more experience, which practically I can understand. But that's very sad. Why not the first marriage? Go to people that can give you some kind of advice, counseling. Hopefully, you learn this from your parents, sometimes what you don't want in your marriage, but that's the way it should be. All right, so let's go into now. We're in the middle of chapter 6. Let me try to get it on the screen.
It's kind of indicative, though, Rabbi, of anything holy and sacred. It's like there's a trend in the world to gradually nibble away at those things and bring them down to common. So no longer is marriage the sanctity of holy matrimony. Now it's just my first marriage, my second marriage.
Yeah, yeah. I think
And
because people,
sadly, that's a trend.
yeah, anything that is tainted, I'm using that in inverted commas, that people think, oh, that's religion, that's religious, because what's being taught definitely in universities, as far as I understand, unless it's a religious university, but what's being taught, and again, it's the same problems in all these universities where you see the wokeism and progressiveness, and kids are really, and these are intelligent young men and women, and they are so mixed up. And you just look at that and you say, what confusion, and where are they getting this? They're being, parents are paying for their education. And the people, I guess, too many of the people teaching in universities are of that frame of mind. I think it's a sick way of thinking. I'm not saying they're sick. It's a sick way of thinking, but it's to move away, the enlightenment and progression and progressiveness is to religion is something a very small part, if you're even silly enough to believe in those things. And therefore, anything that you talk about holiness, spirituality, and not in this East side, the Buddhist form, spiritual and synagogue, church, or anything like that is to be frowned upon, and and you're almost pitied. I think that's what's happening. So you're right. Anything that you talk about, but it's not the way. First of all, fealty, I guess, would be the word in marriage, monogamous, whatever. Those are things that we believe in because, first of all, we believe that's what Hashem wants. It keeps things special, holy, sacred, and they're doing away with all those things. Have a good time and so on. I think somebody, President Trump doing away with the threatening Harvard with with for I think their lack of threatening them with removing the federal funding because of the way they're not dealing with anti-Semitism and other whatever is just I think it's the right way to go. And we have to start speaking up for what we believe in, not looking to impose it upon impose my belief on anyone. But on the contrary, but on the other hand, why is this the norm? And if you say anything else, and I'm sure there are people that they probably can't get tenure because they're known to be whether religious people or so on, or they're not treading the right path, then they're not going to be hired or they're not going to be taught or and so on. So anyway, let's get into now the matter of divorce. Let's see what Rabbi Cherki in his book, the Brit Shalom, let's see what he wrote about it. And again, it's permitted and the best solution sometimes for a bad situation, but it is so it's something we don't want to happen. We should prepare so that it shouldn't happen. Prepare our children, friends, and I get people that used to, when I was a rabbi of the community, I had people turning to me to try to help them get past problem situations and stages in their married life. So divorce, hopefully you can see the page. If heaven forbid, the marriage bond does not turn out well, it can be severed by the decision of one of the couple to separate. You don't need both to agree. It should be, if even one wants out, then the other one releases them from the marriage. They might encourage them, first, let's try some counseling. I'll try to change my ways. But, because it is for people, and I've had some friends that it happened to them. Um, and you hear about other people, let alone what you hear in the news and so on. It is a sad situation when people really loved each other at one point or thought they loved each other, especially when there are children involved. But if one of the couples, one of the man or the woman wants out, it's not right. It's immoral to keep them there under duress. So therefore, it can be severed by the decision of one of the couple to separate. The other side should not. Yes, it is personal, so to speak, but it doesn't mean you're not a good person. It just means you're not the right person for your wife, your spouse. It is desirable to arrange the separation of the man and woman officially. If it's the local court, where it depends where you're living, you go to the justice of the peace, whichever way, or wherever you have to go in order to file for divorce. Obviously, if you're separating and you've already been past the point of no return, where you've decided, I don't want to spend any more time on this. If we've tried, let's separate, not as friends, that might not work, but at least separate on friendly terms. And that should be done for representatives of the community, which means, let's say, the legal organ or authority that deals with these things. Because the same way you went into marriage and it was a communal thing, you did it publicly. It doesn't mean you have to have a big marriage, but it means you want people to know we are husband and wife, we are married. The same thing when divorce comes. Their decision, I'm continuing to read, their decision to separate will be inscribed upon a mutually agreed document. There should be some document that both sign, or at least agree upon, and the husband will declare in the presence of witnesses, you are hereby divorced from me, permitted to any man, right? That's what the man should say. In other words, that you're not a married woman anymore, and therefore you should be allowed to form a union or get married to another man. And the man should not be jealous. And again, I'm not speaking from experience, but in theory, and we can say morally, you shouldn't be jealous that now, because you're also now, you can go with other women. You shouldn't be happy about it, but now you're both free. Or the woman or both will declare, I am hereby no longer under your authority and am permitted to any man. Now, equally, I think she can say, use the same male version, that you are divorced from me and you are permitted to any man and to any woman, and I'm now going to be permitted to any man, and hopefully you'll accept that. So again, it is a sad situation when it happens, but the alternative, when the situation has grown so bad, of course, will be even worse. So therefore, Torah allows divorce, does not encourage it. As we said, the Torah does encourage a happy marriage. And of course, working at the marriage relationship, the marriage bond, not just putting it on cruise control. Spouses need to hear from one another. You are special. I love you. I respect you. We need to have the patience and tolerance to listen to our spouses. Not to agree with them necessarily, but definitely show them enough respect to listen to them. We have to work on ourselves too. More patience, more tolerance. If something bothers our spouse and we think we can change it, it's not a matter of principle, then we should try to change certain habits in order to, she's my friend. Right? She's my best friend. I might have other best friends, but she's the closest. She's the one I've made a commitment to. And, she's brought me joy, and I hope I brought her joy, and we have children and so on. So, as we saw, love your fellow as I have an obligation to make sure I treat her as a friend. And now if I feel that she's not behaving towards me like that, well, okay, say it nicely and explain, you feel a bit let down and so on. And hopefully she loves you enough before it gets too bad. She loves you enough and wants the relationship to succeed, that she'll make those efforts. Okay, let's do a bit more in proper conduct. We always say that Rabbi Cherki, in these chapters in the book Brit Shalom, the covenant of peace for the entire world, that he brings, first of all, obligations at the first half of the chapter, that everybody, that any Noahide, and of course anybody, should feel obligated to behave in that way. And proper conduct is if you want to go sort of to a higher level. Number one, a man must refrain from spending time alone with someone else's wife in a closed room or other area into which other people are not likely to enter. Now, in the Western world, you tell that to a person, they look at you as if, I think, as if you're insane. What are you, crazy? But it makes so much sense. And when people question me about this, non-observant Jews or and so on, I say to them, look at the alternative. Look what's happening outside of people that, use these, call them regulations. I try, if I'm in a room with a woman and it's not my wife, of course, or my daughters or my um, sisters, I will keep the door open, right? I will keep the door open. And I can say that's even with my daughters-in-law, right? You don't make a fuss about it, but one of you make sure the door is open or ajar or the kids are around, whatever. Too much problems come about with people. Again, I've never worked in an office where it was just me and a woman or a few women, or where there were, situations where you might be left alone in the office. Or, even if you're not left in the office, but you're working every day in close quarters between, with people of the opposite sex, I think, it's a minefield. It's a minefield. There's flirting going on, which is dangerous. And again, I think I can say about myself, I had to learn what is flirting and and sometimes I'll ask my wife, is it appropriate for me to say to a woman, for instance, wow, she's looking good? And it usually is not, and I won't. I'm sorry, I'd love to, as a friend, as I'd say to one of my buds. But I try to be extra careful about this, not make her feel uncomfortable. And I let my wife do the complimenting to a woman, and and I will say to a guy, and so. But it's not only, especially if my wife's around, I don't want her to ever think that I was flirting with someone. And we have to be extra careful about this because I don't want to hurt my spouse. So this is one way of doing it. Don't seclude yourself with someone else's wife or even somebody who's not your wife. In an area where it's not likely that someone else is going to enter. If you're in a store or in the office and people are coming in and out the whole time, okay, that's something else during working hours, because nothing could really happen. Number 2, paragraph 2, wearing modest attire that preserves a person's honor. Because we should all decide, okay, what is modest attire? Particularly where women are concerned, there's a bit of an inequality, and especially married women, is an elevated character trait. Let's put it this way. Do you want to look hot? I don't know how to look hot. I wear what I like. I try to be neat and clean, well groomed. I'm not looking to be hot. Maybe before I was married, I was looking, you want to attract the opposite sex, but I only would do it if I was looking to meet someone in order to date and maybe get married. But and again, the imbalance is it's unfair that men maybe can get away with certain things that women couldn't. On the other hand, women have a power over men that I think some women do recognize this power. They should also be careful because men have a beast inside of them. And again, I'm sorry for saying it that way. They have a drive inside of them. And again, sometimes they don't know the limits, and and there are mixed signals being sent out. So going to the office looking hot, what are you looking to do? If you're looking to attract someone in the office to notice you and to date you and invite you out for dinner and so on for a serious relationship, okay, that's one way. But again, if the signals are, she's got a great body. If that's the signal, and I think women can dress beautifully without being overly, again, I apologize, without being overly sexual or sexual alluring. Now, I'm not looking to tell women how to dress. I would never do that. But we should all look at ourselves. What is the message we are trying to send out? What is the signal? Are we sending out a signal like, yeah, look at me, but don't get too close or treat me like an equal? That's hard, I think, for men. So anyway, we should all be looking to wear what we would consider a very hot day. Okay, then you have to decide what you're doing. But it should preserve a person's honor, the person who you're going to be meeting, and especially women in concern. And I think also, thank God my daughters are, they've learned from their mother, but, we all worry about when we're raising our children, the boys shouldn't get into any trouble and the girls shouldn't get into any trouble. So how do we want them to dress? And Where do they get to learn how to dress? Not hopefully from the TV and stars and magazines and so on. Personally, anytime I see a newspaper article, and I usually just read online, any item that's about, I'm just using this as an example. I'm using, let's say, about the Kardashians. I can tell you, I've never seen an episode. Anytime I see anything about the Kardashians, I flip the switch. I move on. What do I care about what these people who are teaching or, and again, they can do whatever they want. I'm not saying they're evil, whatever, but I doesn't interest me at all. It shows so much what is sick and distorted in our society. And again, I wish them love. I just wish they would teach better values, let alone again, ask yourself, are they enjoying life? Do they have good relationships in their families and so on? They might be having fun. I don't. But again, what about the in-between moments when they're not looking gorgeous? Because nobody can look gorgeous the whole time, or going to a party and getting their pictures taken, whatever. So if we want our children to behave in a certain way on many things, then we have to behave in that way. I'm continuing in this paragraph. Therefore, it is also appropriate to refrain from wearing clothes classically associated with the opposite sex. In other words, what is it? Not exactly. Cross-dressing, I think, is something else. At least, again, this is something we try not to. In other words, a man should dress like a man, a woman should dress like a woman. You'll tell me, well, in Scotland, men used to wear kilts. And they still do when I spend time in the United Kingdom, at weddings and fancy affairs, people, the Scots, out of pride to their nationality, men will come in a kilt. Okay, it's fun, it's cute, I love their accents, as I'm sure many of you do. Some of you might have Scottish heritage. So again, in Scotland, or for a Scot to wear a kilt, especially the kilts look different usually, let alone if they wear like almost socks up to their calves, so you can see you can't see much of the men unshaved legs, which I wouldn't be looking at anyway. But generally, and again, for a woman to wear a suit these days, well, women wear suits in many, to the office or whatever. So, but we should be careful I respect women, and therefore I will be careful how I speak to them. I will speak possibly different to a man on certain issues than I will speak to a woman. 3, and maybe we'll finish with that. It is appropriate that the marriage document will include an official commitment on the part of the husband to look after the welfare and comfort of his wife. It doesn't mean that the man has to be a kept husband or a kept man. In Jewish tradition, in the marriage, it's not a contract, but in a document that is signed at the event of the chuppah, of the marriage ceremony. In the document, it speaks more about what the man is promising to the wife or to his bride. Probably, even though the Torah doesn't really say this, but it's probably more because in those days, men were the main providers. The women were doing an equal important, if not more important job of, being more at home with the kids, the cooking and the cleaning. And I'm not saying that's the way it has to be. If the man likes doing that, or if that's the agreement they come to, then fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's why probably you'll find in Jewish tradition, it speaks more about what the husband is promising his wife. Now, you could say also it was important because maybe the husband, it was less obvious to him that he had to look after his wife and not, she should knit some things and sell it and keep her own stuff. There used to be civilizations where, so either way, obviously in the marriage document, it should definitely have the husband says he will look after not only the physical and economical welfare, but the comfort. And it should be emphasized to him, you have more of an obligation to take care of her than she has of you. Now, it shouldn't be condescending or creating an imbalance. It should be that she doesn't have to wait on you. She has to respect you, but you have to wait on her. The rabbi in the community where I live, called Tekoa, which is just outside of Jerusalem, he died from cancer, sadly. He was a legendary figure. But people tell us how much he loved his wife. So if he was at a wedding and he was performing, he was officiating as the rabbi, at the weddings of his children. I forget how many children they have. Some of the children still live here, and the wife lives here, and she's a wonderful woman. They said at the weddings of their children, after he officiated, if he even officiated, it's possible some other rabbi, he got down on his hands and knees and kissed his wife's feet. saying how much he loves her. Now, I don't know if, my wife would give me a kick and push me away if I tried that. But she would, on the other hand, she'd be smiling. She'd be smiling. Oh, look how much he loves me, and he's willing to do that. But I think what a great example that the rabbi was willing to do that. And it wasn't just to make a show. There were stories, somebody said that sometimes in the morning people would see him, his wife was going off in the car and he'd come out of the house screaming, I love you, I love you. Don't forget during the day that I love you. Imagine, wouldn't you love to have a spiritual leader that does those things, right? If you really were interested in having a good relationship with your spouse, and we should all be feeling that, but we're restrained these days, but we should definitely find ways of expressing to our spouses that they are special, and we do want to have a loving relationship, and we are concerned about their comfort. So that's in the marriage bond or license or document that that, or promises, if you want, the vows. Though I think vows, I don't know if it's a Christian thing or not. The idea that there is a commitment being made in the Jewish tradition when a man and woman are getting married, that they are committing themselves, even if they're not saying it. The obvious commitment is that they're going to be faithful to each other. It's also, there's a commitment that some brides and grooms don't remember, is that we are going to work at this. I'm not just going to, let's see how it goes. No, I'm going to work at this marriage. I'm going to try to give my utmost in order to make you happy and make us both happy. And it should be, of course, a mutual thing. The sages were more worried about, does the husband get it that you have to take care of your wife? um, and so on. Now, there's no reason why it can't be mutual or one side taking care of the other, but it was more important to remind the husband, the man, that this is the way to do it. So we hope that people will have happier marriages, so that divorce will not be necessary. But in order to, for our children, what do we want for our children? We want them happy, adjusted, loving, good people. How is that going to happen? Of course, we can love them to bits, but the big step in their lives is going to be when they choose their partner, their spouse, and try to set up a home and establish a home with them and a family. We have to make sure we're giving them the right values, putting them in the right frame of mind, that we have to love our lives and not just the parties and the trips and so on. And we should even pity people that have gotten into the habit that that's the only way to enjoy life. On the contrary, because then there are a lot of gaps in between those parties and the trips and so on. You can enjoy life every day, and that's what we have to thank God every day, that He's created a human creature and a world and a Torah where we can do it. We just have to get into the right frame of mind. So if you're going to celebrate the Chag Matan Torah, again, toast Hashem, toast the revelation at Sinai, read the story there that's mentioned in Exodus, beginning, I think, chapter 19, chapter 20, and have a conversation with the family about, okay, what are we doing? And what does God expect of us? Jewish tradition, we eat cheesecake just to eat something sweet, but you can eat anything of sweetness, to remember that life can be sweet. It depends on us generally. So God bless you all. Chag Sameach, as we say, and look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you, Frank, for arranging this.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for your time. I was just going to say, you were talking about the way people dress, and there's the whole teaching of the things we do, the way we dress, cars we drive, homes we live in, all this stuff, possibly bringing the evil eye upon us. But I think in that teaching, the message was, consider, it's something I remember from military training. You probably do as well, is when they're teaching you how to use the radio, and you got to call for support for whatever it may be. Um, Usually you're going to be pretty excited, and things may not be going exactly how you want them to be, and you may instinctively begin to scream at the other person, I need this now at this level. And what they stressed to us was, consider the receiver. Always consider the receiver. They're trying to understand what you're saying. You want them to get it because you need it really bad. So consider the receiver when you're sending out your message. And in the way we dress, the way we live, we're always sending out a message. And
Very
we
true.
consider the receiver. I dress in plain white shirts, usually plain black work pants, kind of slacks. try to stay humble, common, and give that message when people, because people do tend to observe you, and they'll begin to form a judgment based on your appearance long before you ever speak. It's just human nature. They just do. So if you're giving off that vibe, and my wife as well, she'll wear clothing that's not revealing, or, in today's world, it's very common for women to wear the tank tops, and you see more cleavage going to church or something than you do in movies, sadly. But I give my wife credit. She always dressed modestly, and I respect that about her, and my daughter-in-law as well, and I appreciate it. So, when you consider the receiver on the other end,
Well said. Very well said. I'll use that. I'll use that, Frank, when I have to talk about it again. So God bless you all, and regards to your wife. She sounds like a wonderful woman. You've been
thank you,
blessed,
thank you.
and I bless you all. Okay, so shalom and chag sameach from Israel.
Shalom, shalom. Thanks everyone for joining. See you next week. Hey, good to see you, James Bong. Hope you can make it next week, and Jim, be careful over there on the hill. Take care, everyone.